I was only 19 when my life changed forever. At that age, you think you know everything about love, but in reality, you're just learning. I had just finished school, still figuring out who I was when I met him. He was a little older, confident, and had that charm that made me feel safe. When he looked at me, I felt like I was the only girl in the world. I was only 19. 19, just barely an adult, still figuring out life. At that age, everything feels so big. Every smile, every touch, every word from someone you love feels like the most important thing in the world. And that's exactly how I felt when I met him. He wasn't just any guy. To me, he was charming, confident, and he carried himself like he knew exactly what he wanted. The first time we talked, I remember thinking, wow, this is different. This is special. He had this way of making me laugh at things that weren't even funny, and when he looked at me, it felt like I was the only girl in the room. We started dating, and like most teenage relationships, everything moved so fast. I was head over heels before I even realized it. Looking back, maybe I was too quick to fall, but in the moment, it felt like the safest place in the world was in his arms. He would say things like, "One day, you'll be my wife," or "I don't care what anyone says, you're my forever." At 19, those words don't just sound sweet, they sound like a promise written in stone. I would lie in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying those words in my head. "You'll be my wife. We'll be together forever." And I would smile to myself, believing I had found the one. But a few months later, everything changed. I started feeling different. I would wake up nauseous, my body felt tired all the time, and even the foods I used to love suddenly made me sick. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe it was stress. Maybe it was just my body acting up. But deep down, I knew. I still remember that day I went to the pharmacy. My heart was pounding as I bought a pregnancy test. My hands were sweating so badly, I could barely hold the box. When I got home, I locked myself in the bathroom, sat on the edge of the bathtub, and waited. Those two lines appeared almost instantly. And in that moment, my whole world stopped. I was pregnant, 19 years old, barely out of school, no stable job, no clear future, and pregnant. I sat there, staring at that test, whispering to myself, this can't be real. This can't be happening. The thought of telling him made my stomach twist. Would he hate me? Would he walk away? Would he tell me I ruined his life? For days, I kept it to myself, carrying the weight of that secret like a heavy stone in my chest. Finally, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I called him over one evening. My hands were trembling as I sat across from him. He noticed something was wrong right away. "Babe, what's going on? You look like you've seen a ghost." I took a deep breath and the words spilled out. "I'm pregnant." Silence. He froze for a moment, his eyes wide, his mouth slightly open. My heart sank. But then, instead of anger, he reached out and grabbed my hand. His voice was urgent, almost pleading. "Don't even think about ending it. Please keep it. I'll marry you. I promise. We'll be a family. I'll take care of you and the baby." I just stared at him, tears in my eyes. Part of me was shocked, another part was relieved. I had expected him to panic, maybe even walk out. But instead, he gave me hope. And at 19, hope was all I needed. That night, I lay in bed thinking about everything he said. Marriage, a family, a home together. I started picturing myself in a wedding dress, him waiting for me at the altar, our baby in the future sitting between us in family photos. It was like he had taken my biggest fear and turned it into a dream. Looking back now, I realize how badly I wanted to believe him. I didn't stop to question whether his promises were real. I didn't ask myself if he was truly ready. I just held on to his words like they were oxygen. "I'll marry you. We'll raise this baby together." At 19, I thought love was enough. I thought promises couldn't be broken. But little did I know, those very promises, the ones that kept me going through the hardest days, would one day be the reason my heart shattered into pieces. Pregnancy at 19 was nothing like the movies. There was no glowing skin, no soft music in the background, no picture-perfect moments. For me, it was messy, painful, and lonely. The first few weeks were the hardest. Morning sickness hit me like a storm. I'd wake up nauseous, sometimes throwing up before I could even brush my teeth. The smell of food made me gag, and even water sometimes felt hard to keep down. I remember thinking, how am I supposed to do this for 9 months? But through all of that, I held on to his promise. He kept telling me, "Don't worry, babe. Once the baby comes, everything will fall into place. We'll get married. We'll be fine." I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. At first, he was supportive. He'd call to check on me, sometimes bring me food, sometimes rub my back when I was sick. And I thought, yes, this is the man I'll spend the rest of my life with. He's showing me he cares. But as time went on, things began to change. The calls became less frequent. Sometimes I would text him, "Can you come over? I'm not feeling well," and hours would pass with no reply. Then, he'd finally call back with excuses. "Sorry, my phone died. Sorry, I was busy with the guys. Sorry, I'll make it up to you." At first, I brushed it off. Everyone gets busy, right? But slowly, the distance grew. He stopped coming around as often. He stopped talking about marriage the way he used to. When I brought it up, he would change the subject or say things like, "We'll figure it out later, just focus on the baby." There were nights when I lay in bed, holding my stomach, whispering to my unborn child, "Don't worry, baby. Daddy loves us," he promised. But deep inside, a small voice was starting to whisper back, "What if he doesn't mean it? What if you're alone in this?" Outside of him, the world wasn't kind either. People talked. Neighbors whispered. Some friends distanced themselves. I could hear the judgment in their voices. "She's too young, she ruined her life. She should have been more careful." Every time I walked down the street, I felt eyes on me, like everyone was waiting for me to fail. My parents, they weren't happy. They felt disappointed, like I had thrown away my future. My mom would sometimes look at me and sigh deeply, as if words weren't even enough. My dad barely spoke to me for weeks. The house felt heavier than ever, and I found myself hiding in my room just to avoid the silence. And through all of this, the one person I thought would carry me through started slipping away. There were moments that should have been joyful, like hearing the baby's heartbeat for the first time at the doctor's office. I wanted him to be there, to hold my hand, to share in that magical moment. But he wasn't. Instead, I sat there alone, tears rolling down my face as the doctor smiled and said, "That's your baby's heart. Strong and steady." When I told him about it later, his response was flat. "Oh, that's good. At least the baby's healthy." I wanted more. I wanted excitement, emotion, connection. But he gave me bare minimum words that felt colder every time. I started noticing other things too. He guarded his phone more. He stopped inviting me to certain places. Once, I overheard him on a call, laughing and saying, "Don't worry, she won't find out." When I asked him about it, he brushed it off quickly. "It's just a joke with a friend. Stop overthinking." But I couldn't shake the feeling. Something wasn't right. Still, I stayed. I stayed because I was 19, pregnant, and terrified of being alone. I stayed because I believed his promises. I stayed because when you're that young and vulnerable, hope feels safer than truth. Every day, I told myself, once the baby comes, things will be different. He'll step up. He'll remember his words. He'll marry me, just like he said. But deep down, in the quiet moments when I was honest with myself, I knew something was slipping away. I just didn't want to admit it. And so, month after month, I carried not just the weight of a growing child inside me, but also the crushing weight of doubt, of loneliness, of promises that felt thinner with each passing day. I was 19. I was in love. And I was holding on to a dream that was already starting to crack. The day finally came. After 9 long months of waiting, carrying, worrying, and hoping it was time. It started in the middle of the night. A sharp pain tore through my stomach, one I had never felt before. At first, I thought maybe it was just another cramp, but then it came again, stronger. My heart raced. This is it. I think it's happening. I grabbed my bag, the one I had packed weeks before, and told my mom, "It's time." She scrambled, rushing to get ready, while I tried to breathe through the contractions. Every wave of pain felt like my body was breaking open, but at the same time, there was this strange mix of fear and excitement. I was finally about to meet my baby. On the way to the hospital, I kept thinking, he's going to be here any moment. He promised. He'll hold my hand. He'll finally prove to me, and to everyone else, that we're in this together. When we got to the hospital, the nurses checked me in. The pain was coming faster now. Sweat poured down my face as I gripped the sides of the bed. My mom stayed close, whispering encouragement, but in my head, all I wanted was him. The father of my child. The man who had made all those promises. So I called him. My voice was shaky. "I'm in a hospital, it's time. Please come now." He said, "I'm on my way." And just like that, I felt relief. Everything would be okay once he walked through that door. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Then 2. The contractions were unbearable by now. I screamed. I cried. I begged the nurses for help. And finally, I heard footsteps rushing down the hall. My heart leapt. He's here. The door opened. And yes, it was him. But he wasn't alone. Standing next to him, holding his arm like she belonged there, was another woman. She looked confident, polished, completely out of place in the chaos of my hospital room. I blinked, confused, my mind scrambling to make sense of it. Then he spoke. His voice wasn't soft or caring. It was cold. "This is my fiancée. She came with me." For a moment, I thought I misheard. Fiancé? My contractions stopped mattering. My heart felt like it shattered into 1,000 pieces right there in that hospital bed. I could barely breathe. What do you mean, fiancé? You told me, you said we would get married." My voice cracked, filled with pain and disbelief. He didn't even flinch. He just looked at me, almost annoyed, and said the words that would haunt me forever. "You're just the mother of my child, not my wife." The room spun. My ears rang. I couldn't tell if I was crying from the labor pains or from the dagger he had just driven into my chest. My mom gasped beside me, shouting at him, but her voice felt like it was coming from a faraway place. The nurses exchanged uncomfortable glances, whispering to each other, but no one said a word to stop him. I lay there, legs shaking, heart breaking, body torn between bringing life into the world and watching my own life crumble apart. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him he was a liar, a coward, a heartless man who had destroyed me. But I had no strength left. All I could do was whisper, "Why? Why would you do this to me?" He didn't answer. Instead, he turned to the woman beside him, his so-called fiancée, and put his arm around her shoulder, as if I was nothing more than a stranger. At that moment, something inside me broke. Not just my heart, but my belief in every promise he had ever made. All those nights when he said, "We'll be a family." All those words about marriage, about forever, about raising our child together. They vanished into thin air, replaced with one brutal truth. To him, I was nothing more than a vessel. The contractions came harder, forcing me back into the reality of labor. My screams filled the room, but my soul was numb. I wasn't just fighting to bring my baby into the world anymore. I was fighting to survive the heartbreak that had crashed into me like a tidal wave. Hours later, when my baby finally cried for the first time, I held that tiny life against my chest. Tears streamed down my face, not just from joy but from grief. My baby was innocent, pure, perfect. But the man who should have been standing proudly by my side had chosen someone else. In that hospital bed, between the cries of a newborn and the silence of a broken promise, I realized the truth. He had given me his final answer. I wasn't his wife. I wasn't his forever. I was just the mother of his child. And nothing would ever hurt me more than hearing those words from the man I once thought I couldn't live without. The delivery was behind me, but the scars of what happened that day remained. I left the hospital not just with a newborn in my arms, but also with a broken heart and shattered trust. People congratulated me, but every smile felt heavy because deep inside, I kept replaying his words. "You're just the mother of my child, not my wife." At home, the reality set in. Sleepless nights with a crying baby, endless diapers. The quiet of the house, where I had once imagined raising a family with him, now filled with silence. My mother helped when she could, but I knew the weight of this responsibility rested on me. And then came the whispers from neighbors and relatives. "Where's the father? Didn't he promise marriage?" Some people sympathized, others judged. I had to learn to hold my head high, even when shame tried to bury me. I found myself replaying the humiliation over and over in my mind. His words echoed like a curse. "You're just the mother of my child, not my wife." Weeks turned into months, and he barely showed up. But then, just when I thought I was done with him, he came back. It was a rainy evening. I was rocking my baby to sleep when I heard a knock on the door. My mother opened it, and there he was, standing in the rain, drenched, looking nothing like the arrogant man who had stood over me at the hospital. His eyes were swollen, either from crying or lack of sleep. He dropped to his knees right there in my mother's living room and said, "I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I made a mistake." I was stunned. For a moment, I didn't even know what to say. Part of me wanted to scream at him, to remind him of the pain he caused me. Another part of me, the young, naive girl who once loved him, still longed for his embrace, still wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, he could make things right. He went on. "That woman at the hospital, she's someone my family chose for me. I didn't love her, but I felt trapped. My parents threatened to disown me if I married you. I didn't know what else to do. I panicked. I hurt you. But please believe me, I never stopped caring about you." I stared at him, holding my baby close. His words cut me in a different way. Was this the truth? Or was this another manipulation? I wanted to believe him. God knows I did, but how do you erase the image of him standing there, introducing another woman as his fiancée, while I was in labor with his child? My mother was furious. She told him to leave, said he had no right to step foot in our house after the humiliation he caused. But he refused. He begged, he cried, he promised to change. And I'll be honest with you, my heart wavered. Because as much as I hated to admit it, I still had feelings for him. This was the man I once dreamed of marrying. The man I thought I would grow old with. And here he was on his knees, asking for another chance. But then I looked at my baby. Innocent, fragile, depending on me for everything. And I asked myself, do I want to raise my child in the shadow of betrayal? Do I want to tie my future to a man who abandoned me at my most vulnerable moment? Even now, months later, I struggle with those questions. He still tries to reach out. Sometimes he sends messages, sometimes he shows up unexpectedly, asking if he can see the child. He talks about wanting to be a family again. And here's the truth. Forgiveness sounds easy in theory, but when you've been humiliated in such a traumatic way, it's not that simple. Every time I hear his voice, I remember the hospital room. Every time I see his face, I remember the words, "Not my wife." So I'm torn. Part of me wants to let go of the pain, to move forward, maybe even give him a chance for the sake of our child. But another part of me feels like forgiving him would mean betraying myself all over again. And that's where my story stands today, caught between the desire to heal and the fear of being broken again. So I'll ask you, if you were me, what would you do? Would you forgive a man who shattered you during your most vulnerable moment? Or would you close that door forever, no matter how much he begs?